Watch this.
It was one of the most well-attended GOP conventions in recent memory. But not all who were there feel it was the most productive and are a bit concerned about the direction of the Idaho Republican Party. It's one of the first things you're told to do when you move to Idaho. Register your car, get those Idaho plates, something tens of thousands have done lately. But getting those plates relies on just one machine, which is broken. You know, they weren't exactly paratroopers, but they were a troop of wide-tailed rodents that parachuted out of planes. Yep, we're looking into Idaho's past with beavers in boxes flying into Idaho's backcountry. You know, every 2 years, soon after the primary elections, the dominant party in the state of Idaho gets together for a convention, a statewide get-together for registered Republicans to decide on the approach for the coming year or so. Well, this year they gathered in Twin Falls for 3 days. A boon to the economy, for sure, to the largest city on the south side of the Snake River Canyon. Well, this convention is where the party adjusts its platforms, and they come up with resolutions as well. Platforms don't establish any laws, but they serve as a guidepost for making laws come the legislative session. Resolutions, kind of like platforms, but a bit more specific and something they would actually like to become law, like soon. For example, a few platform changes approved this past weekend, according to Ruth Brown of Idaho Public Television. On the American Family Platform, we affirm that abortion is murder from the moment of fertilization. All children should be protected regardless of the circumstances of conception, including persons conceived in rape and incest. So no abortions, no exceptions. On the Health and Welfare Platform, everyone getting health care should be able to exercise free power of choice without intervention of any element or force of fraud, deceit, duress, overreaching, or the other ulterior form of constraint or coercion. So basically, you can't tell me to get a vaccine or coerce me to do so either. They want Republicans to be registered with the party for 1 year before they can vote in the primary. They want to repeal the 16th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which would remove Congress's ability to tax our income. And on the education platform, they want public funding for students going to private schools. They want parents to have the final say on masks and vaccines in said schools. And they oppose social justice indoctrination in any level of public school, which is a lot. Things like CRT, social emotional learning, DEI, replacement theory, queer theory, those kind of things. As for the resolutions, they came into the weekend with 31 of them, printed out and ready for debate. Everything from Idaho's unequivocal support for Israel, that'd be number one, to a resolution to refuse to recognize imaginary identities, which is code for transgender. Again, these resolutions are just that. Ideas, written with a lot of whereases and ending with a flourish of we resolve to. And some of them are just that, just kind of ideas and resolutions. American combat troops should not be used as world policemen, dismissing the Bonneville County Republican Central Committee lawsuit filed by now former GOP chair Tom Luna, who lost to Dorothy Moon over the weekend, so that lawsuit was immediately withdrawn. There's the repeal of the 16th Amendment, which we already brought up, but which obviously Idaho can't do on its own. And they want to only interpret the U.S. Constitution and the Idaho Constitution as textualism and originalism. Some of the others come with the idea they will try to craft some sort of legislation this winter at the State House. They want safer internet access for children. The one against ESG anti-discrimination, the environmental social governance resolution where companies are rated based on those three things, and some believe also extends to individuals, which it doesn't. Several of that have to do with elections, from making municipal elections partisan, to eliminating college IDs as a form of ID to vote, to anti-crossover legislation. Now, that resolution has to do with the idea a lot of Democrats jumped over and registered as Republican to disrupt the GOP primary election last May. However, facts and data show otherwise. Of the 13 of the 31 of these resolutions, well, those passed that we can confirm since we can't get a response from Idaho's GOP to see a final list. We also know the resolution declaring the illegitimacy of the 2020 presidential election failed. Maybe you could think of these resolutions this way. Idaho's GOP is kind of like the McDonald's of Idaho policymakers. Much like McDonald's being the first you think of when you think of fast food, Idaho GOP immediately comes to mind when you think about prevalent politics in the Gem State. And these ideas that come out of these conventions, for every filet of fish and McRib, there's the McDonald's pizza and the McDLT. Remember the two-sided styrofoam container with a hamburger patty on one side and the bun, toppings like lettuce and tomato on the other, kept the hot side hot, cold side cold, allegedly? Well, some of these resolutions will be like bad fast food ideas. They eventually will fall flat. So we're going to see where these 13 resolutions go since they aren't law yet. Resolutions weren't the only thing going on over the weekend. There were also party elections and lots of antics and drama, apparently. One of those who saw it firsthand was former chair of the Twin Falls County Republican Central Committee. Steve Millington was a Twin Falls County delegate to the convention this year, and he told us they had a tremendous turnout. You know, it's as many conventions he's gone to. He said this one, not his favorite. Of the 775 possible delegates, he said 750 of them registered, and attendance was anywhere from 735 to 750 people for every meeting, which is a lot of people. It meant there was a lot going on.
We hate being told what to do. Wear the mask, take the jab, use these pronouns, bake the cake.
There was an awful lot going on, and there was a great deal of angst and I don't know what you want to call it, campaigning for the offices associated with the state Republican Party. It was never ending. Everywhere you went, people were flashing signs and cards and discussing and talking. And so we all knew that that was going to be a real hot topic come Saturday morning when we had the election of officers.
Mr. Chairman, it is my honor to nominate Dorothy Moon.
Would you consider this a good convention?
Good from the standpoint we had outstanding attendance, and there was a great deal of interaction from all of the delegates participating. I don't think anyone felt like they were left out of the process. And so from that standpoint, I thought we had a lot of involvement and a lot of activity.
How do you come out of this convention feeling about the direction of the GOP?
If we listen to the campaign speeches for the office of chairman from Tom Luna and from Dorothy Moon, there was quite a bit of divergence between one's platform and agenda and the other ones. And so I think the interesting thing now is going to be, where is this new Dorothy Moon and her new executive officers? Which direction are they going to move us, and how are they going to get that done? And is that going to be most beneficial long term for the Republican Party?
Unity is not when party members let Democrats stream in and meddle in our primaries and monkey around with our platform.
And one of the things that I kept saying is, people, for heaven's sakes, we got 100,000 new residents coming to Idaho every year. You know that better than I do. Let's not disenfranchise those people. Let's encourage them to become members of the Republican Party and carry our Republican banner throughout the state of Idaho. And some people have this idea that if you aren't a fifth generation Idahoan, you don't belong here.
There's this belief that there was a lot of Democrats crossing over to jump in on the primary this past spring.
Right.
But that's just not the case. I mean, we looked at the numbers from the Secretary of State's office. That didn't happen.
That's exactly right, Brian. That did not happen. And so I think some people have a false sense of concern when they start talking about this crossover thing. Yes, that happens on some small measure, but I don't think we saw 20 or 30 or 50% of the crossover. That's not what happened. And so this idea that we've got to prevent or prohibit people from voting because they might be, quote, crossover voters is just obscene. It doesn't work.
How do you feel, and how do you feel about the way the Republican Party is going? If that's the leadership, and this is what they're saying, even though it's not true, how do you feel about that?
If that becomes one of the anchor points that they want to secure and push in the next 2 years in their leadership, we run the risk, in my opinion, of alienating a lot of people who would otherwise say, I like Republican values and I like Republican ideals, and this is where I want to be associated. And we can't marginalize some small thing and change our entire direction based on a marginal approach to a problem.
We were once the bastion of freedom and liberty in this country. There were states that have surpassed us. And we've got to make sure, with the influx of population coming in, we have to make sure, with the Democrats coming at us with full force, that we have our barriers up, our guns are loaded, and ready to keep this state free.
There also was this part about the abortion and removing any exemption for it.
That we spent over 2 hours debating the abortion issue, and it basically boiled down to 2 phrases that people wanted inserted into the platform. And I kept thinking, get over it, people. We've got it listed right here. We have our rights, we have our legal rights, we have our God-given rights, we have our inalienable rights, and you're asking people to make decisions that's none of your business. Read that statute and then ask yourself, what are we fighting over here?
So, Steve, how do you feel about the direction of the GOP in Idaho?
Dang you, Brian. I'm a little bit distraught. It was not my best convention. And so I am saying to myself, this is not the end of the world. This is not the end of the road. We can overcome any difficulties that we see coming at us. We will stand firm and regain this high value, high structure of Republican ideals and values. We will continue to elect high quality, solid individuals as Republicans in the state of Idaho. We just need to remember that I think it was Ronald Reagan that says, if I agree with you 80% of the time, you're not my enemy.
Are there a lot more that believe the same way you do, you think?
Boy, I sure hope so, Brian. I really do. And I think there are a lot of people who think that way.
By the way, we did reach out to Brandon Durst from Ada County about this crossover voting resolution, but we have yet to hear back. In fact, Mr. Durst hasn't spoken or agreed to speak to us in quite some time. Mr. Millington told us one of the difficulties facing Idaho's Republican Party because of increasing population and demographics, there are 4 counties who control all of these issues at conventions like this, and that would be Ada, Canyon, Kootenai, and Bonneville. He said you add up the delegation from those 4 counties, and they have close to a majority in these elections. Millington also told us the other 40 counties need to learn to get along and vote together, or, in his words, we're going to get run over. By the way, one of the resolutions that did not pass was a resolution to protect rural representation. All right, as we just heard with that last story before the break, Idaho's population is booming. No secret to any of us, right? 2020 census numbers alone show Idaho grew more than 17% over the past decade. More than 120,000 in just the last 2 years moved to the state of Idaho, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. And we could see it out there on the roads. Take a look at the license plates. Seeing a lot of those California plates out there, those are the ones Idahoans seem to complain about the most. So if you just moved here to Idaho, little advice. Get an Idaho license plate. State law, by the way. You have to change your license plate within 3 months. Andrew Bartline, though, learned today it might take you a little longer, maybe more than the full 3 months, to get that new license plate because, well, one thing is happening right now.
Yeah,
and it's just one thing.
There's a machine that makes the plates in Idaho, and it went down on June 8th.
Okay.
It's not going to be up until July 29th, Brian.
Okay,
So
almost a full 2 months.
For almost a full 2 months, the plates haven't been able to be built in Idaho, or made, I should say. ITD says the machine broke down on June 8th, like I said. ITD has a partnership with the Idaho Correctional Industries, where inmates are the ones who make those plates. ICI says this is a custom machine. During a maintenance check, they noticed a shaft needed to be replaced. Well, to get this custom part for a custom machine, you had to wait. We know there's been supply chain problems for everything these days. And the people who need those plates, they now have to wait too. Normally, ITD says it takes about 30 days to receive those license plates in the mail after you register your car. And this machine failure could add another week, another 10 days. But we talked to several people today at the DMV who are registering their vehicles. They say 10 days is a huge understatement. One man says he rents cars for a living, and these delays are starting to impact his business.
We've actually registered about 5 cars in the last 2 months, and so we're still waiting on our plates.
My 2 Harley Davidsons, mine and then the one I bought for my son, we have been waiting on those about 3 months, almost over 90 days now.
I don't want our customers to be pulled over by the police because there's, just a paper tag on the back.
ITD says police, Idaho State Police and local police are aware of this issue and this delay. And your registration, that piece of paper, is valid without the metal plate. But if that paper registration is not easily visible, police may pull you over to confirm you're legally on the road. One of the men we talked to today, the guy with the motorcycles, says he has a Jetta too that's been about 2 months since he's gotten his plates on it. And his son was pulled over because they couldn't see that paper registration. ICI says they plan to work overtime to catch up with the delay, but that too will take, I think, 3 to 4 weeks. So at this point, Brian, it's mostly just an inconvenience for drivers.
Yeah.
We know that rental business owner was a little tough for him.
Right.
But if you have that piece of paper up in your window, you should be all right.
We all know how much that tape doesn't stick to that window for very long. That
Yeah.
when you attach it to. So,
Well, I know.
especially in these temperatures.
Mine's taped up right now, and the sun starts to melt it, so
Yeah.
that can be tough too.
All right, and convenience, that could be a problem for some people. All right, thank you very much. Interesting. Thanks, Andrew. All right, good news. We got a reprieve from the triple-digit temperatures today. First time more than a week. Got some of you thinking, though, how about snow? Mike Callison, yes, he texted and asked, has it ever snowed in July in Idaho? So, you know what we did? We're going to ask Bree Eggers that question, and she did some digging for us.
I did
Bree?
some digging. Yeah,
Yes, you did.
You don't have to shovel sunshine. You know, we say that all summer long here. Let's talk about snow in July. I wish I could give you a clear-cut answer, but the answer really isn't yes, and it really isn't no either, so I'll explain here. July snow in Boise, looking back on the record books, I have found 3 instances where there has been a trace of snow recorded within the month of July. It happened in 1998, 1995, 1970, but look at the temperatures, even the low temperatures for those days. You're thinking about snow that you can shovel, and that's just not the case here. So what it comes down to is the fact that when we put this data into the record books, or when the data is put there, I don't do it, there are 2 columns. There is one for precip, and then there is one for total snowfall. Now, precip would include all of it, melted down into whatever is water in that precipitation. That includes snow, rain, graupel, hail, all of it. It goes into the precip column, melted down as water equivalent. But when it comes to snow, it has to be a couple of different types of precipitation, and graupel counts as one of those types. However, graupel is soft hail. It's a convective precipitation, much like hail, which I know, little ice balls. You think, well, in order to get ice balls, you probably have to have cold temperatures like you'd see in the wintertime, but hail is actually a summer precipitation type, also a convective precipitation. We need thunderstorms for these types of precipitation to form. And so my suspicion is, I think, yes, you can call it snow in July, but it was likely graupel, little snow pellets, or soft hail, or perhaps even hail that was misinterpreted or was decided that it was snow when it was really hail. Either way, we probably had thunderstorms on those days where we recorded a little bit of snow in July. Not yes or no.
It's all in the nuance, Bree. All right, it was back in summer of 2020, more than 2 years ago. One night, we happened to be watching Jeopardy. Alex Trebek, God rest his soul, asked this question.
In the 1950s, Idaho relocated these amphibious rodents by dropping them with parachutes out of airplanes.
Of course, you know the answer, or the question as it should be in this case. Strange but true piece of Idaho history. What are beavers? Amphibious animals falling from the sky. Yes, that happened here in the 208. Some of us actually knew exactly what Alex was talking about. Others a bit confused by this thought of parachuting beavers in Idaho, but we did the research, and yep, City of McCall's population boom in the 1940s had something to do with it.
If you were only told about it, you might not believe it. Like a story passed around campfires from one generation to the next. It goes like this. In Idaho's mountains, tucked beside a sparkling lake, sits McCall. With its views and location, it started to pull people in, and the community starts to grow. Family homes, vacation homes, businesses being built. It was going so well, until it wasn't. Shortly after World War II, the town found itself with a problem. Turns out, a colony of beavers, who had been in the area for centuries, began destroying property with their dam tendencies. Beaver, dam, kind of go hand in hand. They were in a fix, and that needed fixing.
He's in. Careful preparation and knowledge of the beaver's habits has paid off.
So the Idaho Department of Fish and Game decided they were going to relocate the rodents to other more remote parts of Idaho. Although this relocating required a flight plan and actual planes. In 1948, Fish and Game officers test dropped Geronimo, their guinea pig, if you will, several times, by box, into Idaho's backcountry.
Into the drop box, nearly ready for that flight back into the mountain.
And it worked. It became the mode of operation to move 75 other members of Geronimo's Beaver Brotherhood. The purpose of this parachuting program? To actually raise the beaver population, while also helping preserve Idaho's habitat. While that was more than 50 years ago, it's still remembered today in remnants in the form of stickers on the front of t-shirts and told in children's books.
A true tale indeed. Think those 40 pounds of fur were a bit disoriented with that displacement? A film that only recently resurfaced. Fish and Game told us they had known about it for a while, but they had no idea where that film was until it popped up in 2015. So they posted it, all 14 minutes of it. And it's had more than 600,000 views on YouTube. All right, final moments of the show, and Nikki had this to say about the GOP convention in Twin Falls this weekend. I'm a lifetime Republican. I vote using common sense, but the far right would label me a Democrat. I, too, am distraught with the GOP, says Nikki in Boise. Meanwhile, another one, kind of the same vein on that one. Today, this 76-year-old grandmother drove to Ada County election office and changed her registration from Republican to Independent. Feels good to not be associated with them anymore. Good, but still sad, says Leone Powell, excuse me. Dorothy Moon, want to do away with crossover voting? Open the primaries, said Bruce. A lot of people saying the same thing. We'll see you back here tomorrow.